Philadelphia 76ers season has been off the rails for quite some time now, and it feels as if everyone around the league is getting their jabs in. Now, while this has not been the issue that has derailed this season, backup center has consistently been an issue that has plagued this franchise, and one familiar face has shown back up to have his little jab at his former organization. I'm going to break down what Paul Reed said regarding the Sixers' outlook, why we got to have a little bit of fun with this one, and the response by Nick Nurse. And ultimately, let's jump right into it. What got the party started was a tweet from Keith Pompey saying a daily glimpse at the NBA reverse standings, highlighting where the 76ers are at the bottom here. And Paul Reed quote tweets that and said, "They thought I was the problem." Now, I do want to dive into exactly what he's talking about with this, the outlook, and why things just did not work out for B-Ball Paul, and why the backup center situation and potentially starting center situation may be more unclear than ever. Now, before I dive fully into it, I do want to take a quick break and take a word from our sponsor. Is the prime time to do this as March Madness is upon us. So let's listen to this real quick and get right back to the action. We are kicking off a March Madness pool for the channel by partnering with the Hottakes app and other digest channels for this event. It is completely free to sign up. Just download the Hottakes app, click the March Madness banner at the top, and under group select the Digest Media pool. This is really exciting as there's over $25,000 in prizes to be won, and since there's a much smaller pool of people participating, there's a real chance in winning big compared to other bracket challenges out there. Check out the link below or scan the QR code to download the app, and make sure to use promo code DIGEST in all caps to get exclusive perks when signing on. Again, this is completely free, and if you have any issues whatsoever, just use the email down below. We are excited to see you in this March Madness pool. Now let's get into the topic of the video today. And my bracket has officially been filled out and is in that contest right there. So make sure you guys hop in the mix as well. Would love to compete against all you guys. And who knows, maybe one of us will walk away with that pretty prize right there. Now, to dive back into the topic of today, of course, that is what Paul Reed said. And Nick Nurse was directly asked about this himself following the game. And Nurse said, quote, "I don't have a response. We certainly didn't think Paul Reed was a problem." Nick Nurse when asked about Paul Reed's recent tweet. Now, that is where I would just kind of set the full context here, is I don't think there was anyone in the Sixers organization and the Sixers fan base that believed Paul Reed was the issue with this franchise here. And in fact, I would push back and say he was one of the more beloved role players during his time with the franchise here. And for Paul specifically, while the Detroit Pistons are playing well, I wouldn't exactly be flexing your role on the team. It is pretty game-by-game basis for when he does play. To take a peek at what his stats have looked like on the season overall, do want to pull these up here, that for the Detroit Pistons, he's played in just 38 games this season, 9.2 minutes per game across that stretch of time. He's averaging 4.1 points, 2.6 rebounds. A little bit less than the 24 games he started last season, played in all 82, 19.4 minutes per game, 7.3 points, 6.0 rebounds there. Look at that, 2.4 on the offensive rebounds, 1.3 assists. I think I'm still willing to sit here right now and say that Paul Reed was the best backup center that Joel Embiid's ever had. And what do I mean by that statement? More than a strong praise of Paul Reed, but more of an indictment on all the options that have rolled through this franchise. The Dwayne Dedmons, the DeAndre Jordans, all these guys that were so far past their prime. The Greg Monroe, Amir Johnson. We can circle through the Rolodex. Boban Marjanovic, Al Horford. Let's not forget that experiment that went down, and it has been something that has really let this franchise down on a lot of occasions. Now, this is for the first time ever that we don't really feel that way, but unfortunately it is for the reason of your starting center not being available. And while I think it's unfair to fully judge Andre Drummond based on how the context of how the season has gone, it's tough to feel great about that being the solution when this team does actually lock in and try and play competitive basketball moving forward. Now, to directly compare the two, Andre Drummond and Paul Reed, I do think is interesting here. That I'm not going to, go out of my way to defend any of this here. At their peak, there's no doubt Andre Drummond has reached heights as a player that Paul Reed likely never will. I don't think we ever see Paul Reed making an all-star game, an all-NBA team, or anything like that. But I do like Paul Reed, and for their specific roles, I do think Paul Reed is a better option there. Now, that doesn't mean the Sixers have any chance at bringing him back. And in fact, if he continues launching tweets like this, I think it's probably extremely unlikely that he is ever back in the Sixers organization. But I do think Paul, is a little misguided in his feelings here. And I thought Sam DiGiovanni of Clutch Points, who first reported that quote here, did a pretty nice job summing it up in his article. So he writes it out. Reed isn't afraid to speak his mind, or as he would call it, keeping it 50 times 2, but it's odd to see him take a random jab at his former team. He clearly interprets the Sixers' decision to waive him after 4 seasons as an admission that they thought he wasn't good enough to remain there. Feeling snubbed is somewhat understandable through that lens, though the Pistons also didn't want him to join their salary books for as much money as he was making. They waived Reed before his $7.7 million salary was guaranteed, and then re-signed him to a minimum deal after he cleared waivers. Nonetheless, Detroit clearly wants Reed on its roster to serve as a backup for Jalen Duren and Isaiah Stewart. While Reed is enjoying a small part of the Pistons' resurgence, the 76ers are limping to the finish line of the season. And I do think it's fair game for Paul Reed to take a little jab. I don't think he was treated overly well here. It started with Doc Rivers outright hating him. Let's not forget this isn't the Paul Reed victory tour, which is one of the all-time scumbag quotes I've ever heard from a coach. After a second-round pick, a guy that's not expected to play an active role popped off for a 20-15 game in the last game of the season because the fan base begged you to give him an opportunity. And Doc Rivers is like, that's not why I'm here. We're here to win games. Who cares about Paul Reed when he's, an active player on your roster there? But nonetheless, I don't think Nick Nurse loved the Paul Reed experience either. And it's interesting, when projecting forward from here, that obviously there has to be more stability at the center position. And it is fair to push back that most of this question falls on the shoulders of Joel Embiid. But there does have to be an Andre Drummond conversation. And what is especially concerning about that is the contractual outlook from here. And to dive into what exactly that is here, this is a player option that Andre Drummond possesses. We are talking about for next season, $5 million player option here, and I am pretty certain that he's going to pick it up. For starters, Andre Drummond definitely seems to love it in Philadelphia, which I appreciate there. Again, I don't want to hold it too much against him because everything has been bad this season, but when he has been out on the floor, it's really frustrating that he's a cone in the pick and roll. He has no presence as a shot blocker. His touch around the rim might be the worst I've ever seen out of an NBA basketball player. I mean, I swear sometimes it feels like Andre Drummond is missing layups on purpose to just get his own board. Some of the attempts around the rim are not even remotely close in a way that it's kind of puzzling to have that level of touch for a professional athlete there. But nonetheless, for Andre specifically, it's another weirdness in his game. His hands are excellent defensively from a steal perspective. That it is sticking his hand in passing lanes, jabbing out on guys trying to take him off the dribble. He's very good in that. Despite that, he can't catch a ball that is thrown his direction when he's the guy on the offense end. When he's screening and rolling, that ball coming back to him is never getting caught. It is never coming into his body, him collecting it, and then him going up and shooting or dunking. That process does not happen. It is interrupted 10 times out of 10, whether it's a bobble, whether it's him just straight up not catching it bricking off his knee. All these things have happened frequently this year. Now, for Andre specifically, I don't think it gets much better here. And to kind of highlight on his season overall output here, 7.3 points, 7.8 rebounds, 2.4 fouls per game, 1.4 turnovers, shooting 50% from the field, 15% from three. And I will say that here, him attempting three-pointers has been one of the more tolerable parts of the second half of the season. It's been brutal to watch. There does seem to be a genuine joy in Andre Drummond for him shooting up three-pointers. Now, this does not get you anywhere. This doesn't help this team in any regards here, but it is a little fun thing that I have kept in mind. But when reflecting back on these contracts, I do think that this is something that the Sixers need to acknowledge here. They are not in control of the future of three players on their team: Kelly Oubre Jr., Andre Drummond, and Eric Gordon there. Those are all guys that are slightly different in outlook. That Kelly, I would say, is very clearly the most positive basketball player out of the three, even though I understand he has his flaws here. Kind of evaluating this one wholeheartedly, I think it's pretty certain that Kelly Oubre does opt into that. I find it unlikely that on the open market, Oubre gets more than the $8 million that he's guaranteed with that player option there. And I think that's a perfectly fine price point for him to get back. But I also think he's far more expendable next year. When you are talking about the growth of Justin Edwards, all these other guys coming in, Quentin Grimes will eat into some of the role of what Kelly Oubre does. Players like that, and that's not even factoring in Paul George, hopefully a better season next year. It's not as, while his sort of skill set was so lacking on the Sixers organization for a while, we're starting to get more of those players, and I do think that makes him a bit more expendable there. Eric Gordon is the only guy that I think I truthfully could see opting out just because he clearly hates it here as much as he had. It wouldn't shock me if this was elective surgery that he got to, just miss the second half of the season, because it's been that kind of year for Eric Gordon specifically. And I also kind of get it from his perspective, to be completely honest. He bought in to be a role player and a championship contender, and this team has the 5th worst record in the NBA. So while it's not ideal from a teammate perspective, I do understand how he got to that conclusion, and I think he is the most up in the air. With that being said, I don't think think he's getting anything more than a veteran's minimum anywhere else in the league, and that's slightly more than that. So if money is his priority, would not shock me if he tries to make that the case. Drummond, I do think, will opt in, but the positive spin that I will turn on this is if they do opt into their player options, that does not mean you can't trade them. And if, say, Drummond and Oubre both opt into those player options there, it's about $13 million, a little over it, that you can package together to work as a trade package. That can get you like a legitimate player, a $13 million guy, $15 million guy, potentially on how the salary works. You're probably going to need a third team to make it all work because of the new CBA, but that's a decent baseline of money to work with. And if you're talking about attaching draft picks, or if there is a young player that intrigues guys, maybe a team loves Ricky Council and you can kind of sell him off in some sort of deal like that, there is a little lineup flexibility or roster flexibility that could be. But my point being, or my conclusion here, while Paul Reed, it's fair to take jabs here, they do have to find an upgrade over Andre Drummond, because I don't think that they can survive another season with him on this team. He's not the biggest problem. There are far more issues to worry about, and I will make that clear. But us kind of checking off the box that backup center was solved, that is not the case, my friend. So it will be interesting to see how this all shakes out from here. I hope that we see very limited opportunities of Andre Drummond in the Sixers uniform moving forward. He does seem like a great guy. He does seem like he loves it here, but I just don't see a world in which he can play positive basketball minutes for the Sixers franchise moving forward, regardless of what the expectations are. But let me know what you guys think in the comments about the outlook for Andre Drummond specifically, and those comments on or by Paul Reed there. Did you take offense to those? Do you think that was out of pocket? I kind of give him a pass. Paul Reed, we kind of accept who he is. And I will tell one funny Paul Reed story real quick. So as probably a lot of you guys know, that he did do the podcast with RB Philly Take. Me and RB ran into Paul while we were out there in Vegas at Summer League, just in the floor of a casino that we were kind of hanging around. Me and RB were posted up at the bar, just kind of taking in, because it was cool seeing all the NBA players roll through, the GMs, the coaches. I was liking just kind of posting up, seeing who's talking to who, all that kind of thing, and taking in the scene, see if I can get in the mix a little. But we see Paul Reed walk across and kind of jot off to the corner here. So I saw him, pointed out to RB. We're like, all right, let's go say what's up, because obviously they have a decent relationship there. We walk up, and at this point, Daryl Morey was like on the other side of the bar here. So he was at the same casino in that process. So we go up and talk to Paul, and I mentioned that. I was like, yeah, Daryl's right over there. And he turned and looked, and he's like, man, Daryl, and just kind of changed the subject. And I was like, all right, that's all you needed to say for what your opinion on the relationship is there. So I did want to share that, but shout out to my guy B-Ball Paul. All love for him. I'm rooting for the best in Detroit, and honestly, no heartfelt feelings on my end for this particular interaction. But let me know if you guys feel differently in the comments. As always, make sure you guys are smashing that subscribe button if you have not already. Drop a like on this video here. I'll be back talking to you next time right here on Sixers Digest. Peace.